All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is an absolute joy to see such a packed audience waiting for this lecture. We've heard nothing but talk about this lecture for the past few days. So welcome, everyone. And I know that we all know that this is Professor B.N. Goswamy. As everyone always says, he needs no introduction, but there are certain things that we have to mention about him. So I'm going to introduce Professor Goswamy very briefly and then invite him to speak. This is part of Perspectives, which is a lecture series organized by the CEPT Foundation Program, meant primarily for our first-year students to make sure that we have an opportunity during the first year to come across ideas in the arts, in the social sciences, and in science, to develop a sense of curiosity, to figure out all the many things that we could possibly be interested in. So as part of this lecture series, we have Professor B.N. Goswamy, who is a distinguished art historian and Professor Emeritus of Art History at the Punjab University, Chandigarh. His work over the years, especially in the area of Indian painting, has influenced contemporary scholarship. Professor Goswamy's contribution has been acknowledged through various honors, including the Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship, the Rydberg Award for Outstanding Research in Art History, the Padma Shri, the Padma Bhushan from the President of India. Until recently, he also held a Tagore National Fellowship for Cultural Research. Professor Goswamy has taught as visiting professor at several universities across the world. I'm going to mention just a few, such as University of Pennsylvania, Heidelberg, California, Texas, and Zurich. He has also been responsible for major exhibitions of Indian art at Paris, San Francisco, Zurich, San Diego, New York, and so forth. The two-volume study, Masters of Indian Painting, 1100s to the 1900s, which he co-edited, served to introduce major exhibitions of the same name at the Museum Rydberg, Zurich, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. Among the remarkable books that he has authored and contributed to, which I guess we are more familiar with, we mentioned just some of the latest. The Spirit of Indian Painting, Close Encounters with 101 Great Works, published by Penguin in 2014. Manku of Guler, another great Indian painter from a small hill state, published in 2017. And the more recent edited volume, which is Oxford Readings in Indian Art, published by Oxford University Press this year. Today we have the privilege of listening to Professor Goswamy talk about Indian paintings. And as he promises us, unlike the initial impression we make of them, an impression determined to a great extent by their size, Indian paintings from the past are layered objects, shot with thought and worked out with great subtlety. Professor Goswamy will lead us through the process of peeling the layers, carefully, one after the other, for them to yield to us at least a measure of what they really contain. He tells us, as a promise, it might sound like an exercise in patience, but the delight that uncovering meanings brings can be compensation enough. So I would like to invite Professor Goswamy to take us through his lecture, which he titles Like a Mirror in the Hand.
May I say at the outset, what a pleasure it is to be with a young audience and to be here at CEPT, where I have had the occasion to speak some years ago, but it's after a number of years that I return. You know, when you are in a situation in which you are at the moment, I'm quite sure anxieties hang in the air as to what is this man going to tell us? Is he going to be able to, are we able to sit through for 1 hour in whatever he's saying? So anxieties hang about like bats in abandoned palaces. But I assure you that one of the best things about an art history lecture is that we switch the lights off so anyone can sleep without much embarrassment to either party, right? But as long as nobody snores, I'm comfortable. What am I going to talk about? Essentially, to lead you into a world which I have been inhabiting for the last 50 years of my life, and see if we can make something of this mysterious, somewhat inaccessible world of art. I've titled this brief lecture as Like a Mirror in the Hand. Why do I choose that title? Because that's how you look at it. A painting that I'm going to share with you are small works, average size, a little smaller than the A4 sheets on which you write. And these paintings were never hung on the walls, they were never framed, they were always produced in large numbers, and they were in stacks, right? So you took them out from time to time, you were never there for permanent display, and you held a painting in your hand while looking at it, at a distance of about 12 to 14 inches from the eyes, at an angle of about 45 to 50 degrees, and you read it like this, like you will hold a mirror in your hand. And you read the painting from top to bottom, left to right, right to left, bottom to top. And if you're lucky, the painting talks back to you, right? It's an intimate experience we are talking about. Not a painting hung on the wall and there are hundreds of people, breathing down your neck and so on, wanting to get close to it. It is a one-on-one experience that we can be sure of. A great poet of the 18th century, an Urdu poet called Mir Taqi Mir, had a wonderful couplet, which I am very fond of citing. Two couplets, in fact, of his. One of them is, Le saans bhi ahista ke nazuk hai bahut kaam, aafaq ki is kargahe shisha gari ka. It's a cautionary thing or an invitational thing. Breathe gently here and soft. For the world you are about to enter is fragile, is made of thin sheets of glass, and it can crack any time that its sounds of boots can be heard around it. It's a gentle, soft, layered, embedded kind of an experience entering the world of art. But apart from that, he also had a wonderful other couplet which led me to title this particular talk like this. Thank you. It's about a mirror. He said, मुंह ताका करे है जिस तिसका, मुंह ताका करे है जिस तिसका, हैरती है ये आईना किसका. Talking about a mirror. This mirror is looking now into this face and now into that face, and is constantly wondering to itself, is asking itself, who do I belong to? Obviously it belongs to him who looks in, or her who looks into it. So a work of art is like that mirror in the hand. It belongs to the person who looks not at it, but into it. The visual entry into work of art is the critical thing. The eye is such a great and wonderful instrument. It can take in hundreds of sights in seconds. But one has to be patient. One cannot slur over the surfaces. One cannot move too quickly. One really has to linger, deliberately linger over works of art to be able to take something from it, from that work of art which you are looking at. Kumaraswamy, the great savant, last century, Anand Kumar Swami said something very beautiful which is stuck in my mind. He said, you take from a work of art what you bring to it. It is the riches of your mind. It is what is really occupying your mind, the range of thoughts, the range of literature that you have read and so on, which allows you, which in a certain sense permits you to enter visually a work of art. At the same time, what one absolutely cannot afford to lose is a sense of curiosity. What is it? What is it that I'm looking at? And I'll take you briefly through an experience of my own childhood. I used to study in a small municipal school when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And we used to sit on the choir matting on the floor of the school. I remember the name of the school in a small town called Gurdaspur in the Punjab. The school I went to was called Hanuman Primary School. So it gave me power, right? Hanuman. Anyway, so our teacher, whose name unfortunately I can't remember, he used to walk up and down after assigning us some little task. Memorize this, and so on and so forth. And he always used to continuously speaking to himself. We thought, like all students do, that he's gone off his head, right? And this is what his situation is. But some words, we couldn't understand a word of what he said. But Urdu, that I remember, that was the language. And some words, a few words, sat in my ear and occupied them. And trust me when I say this, 40 years later, I opened a book of poetry by the great poet Iqbal, and I looked at the first 6 lines on that page, and I said, for heaven's sake, this is what Masterji used to recite to himself. And I share that with you because it has something to do with curiosity. I can understand that you are not Urdu speaking, maybe you understand 1/10 of what I'm saying, but I'll recite those lines for you because they are important to me personally, and they might make a difference to you. पालता है बीज को मट्टी की तारीकी में कौन? 6 lines, each ending with a question. पालता है बीज को मट्टी की तारीकी में कौन? कौन दरियाओं की मौजों से उठाता है सिहाब? कौन लाया खींच कर पश्चिम से बादे साजगार? ये ज़मीं किसकी है? किसका है ये नूर आफताब? और किसने भर दी मोतियों से होशाए गंदुम की जेब? और मौसमों को किसने सिखलाई है खुए इनकलाब? पालता है बीज को मट्टी की तारीकी में कौन? Who is feeding this tiny little seed which is sleeping in the dark depths of the soil? Who keeps on feeding it? Question. No answer necessarily, but a question. कौन दरियाओं की मौजों से उठाता है सिहाब? Who is it that is able to raise these great big clouds which rise from the golden rivers that flow in my land? कौन लाया खींच कर पश्चिम से बादे साजगार? Who brings these wonderful westerly winds in my direction? ये ज़मीं किसकी है? Who does the earth belong to? किसका है ये नूर आफताब? Where does the earth get its brilliance from? And the sun gets its brilliance from? And the last couplet, किसने भर दी मोतियों से होशाए गंदुम की जेब? You know, a sheaf of corn, of wheat, right? He says, who is it that puts one seed after another like pearls that the jeweler uses in that thing? और मौसमों को किसने सिखलाई है खुए इनकलाब? And who teaches the seasons? There's time for you to go and for the next to come in. 7 questions in 6 lines. And I still feel moved by the fact that this teacher of mine, right, and this is something like 70 years ago. I mean, I'm about 100 years old, right? So, I mean, about like that. So, it's extraordinary, quite extraordinary, the desire, the keenness of mind to enter a world, ask questions to which not necessarily there are answers. Certainly, there are no easy answers to that. So, if you can take something from this, that curiosity is essential, especially when you are facing a new area. I don't think any of you are art historians, and I hope some of you will enter that kind of a thorny field at some point of time in your lives, whatever. The point essentially is that when we look at these images, which I'm going to share with you, questions will come to your mind. What is it that I'm looking at? The answer to that, part answer to that, it is not a question of what is in art, but what art does, what it does to you. This theme may be the most familiar, the most trite, the most used, weather-worn kind of a theme, but what does it do to you? And how do you render it? How do you get close to it in your minds? That is the question. We are I can assure you, I have been at this game for a field for a very long time. And if I were to claim that I know everything about art or about field that I've chosen, nobody could be more stupid than I am, right? Or would be, right? I don't. My situation is a little like this. Can we have the lights dimmed a little? Is it possible? Or I'm inviting you to sleep a minute. No? Yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah? Okay. I was in Jaisalmer many years ago. And Jaisalmer, you know, is one of those sort of great sort of kingdoms in the middle of the most expanded desert that India has. And I was curious to know, to look at the art of Jaisalmer. I had heard that there were wonderful murals in the palace. So I had my camera with me. Not a particularly efficient camera, but I was equipped. And I wanted to enter that particular gallery which has paintings on the walls. But it was closed. I mean, the most common situation in India, the person who had the key to the room, his mother had died, his grandmother had died for the 9th time or something like this. So, so it was not to be found. But luckily there was a wooden door and there was a little hole, a tiny little hole. I put my camera against that and took this picture. This is all that I was able to capture. Now, what am I looking at? Should I move away from here? Sorry. What am I looking at? This tiny little, everything is dark around it. And there are these 6 or 7 young women. Who are they? I have no idea. They could be princesses. They could be common people sort of in the bazaars or going to attend a fair, or a festival. They could easily be gopis in search of Krishna. Who knows? We have no idea at all. This is the state of our ignorance. We have a tiny little image in front of it, of us ourselves, but nothing more than that. I look at the page from the sketchbook of an artist. Confusing, completely confusing. Now what looks like a kind of a poor man's Jackson Pollock, I mean, towards the right, there's all these scratches with brushes and so on. But as you know, painters have to do what is called nok nikalna, right? They get the point, the brush to a particular point of thinness. And then they keep on testing this out, this pigment, that pigment, and so on. But in that, if you notice towards the left, there's a figure, a young figure who seems to be dancing. Who is he? I don't know. I pull myself back. We see the same figure there. Now I can make a little more sense of that. Behind him, there are a number of young women, one or two men playing music, making music. Cymbals in their hands, musical instrument, one or two, and the same kind of, scratches and walls and so on and so forth on the same sheet of papers. Now, we can now sit down and imagine maybe it is Krishna. Maybe they are asking him to dance, the gopis are or something like that. Who knows? I don't know. I, frankly, do not have an idea, but I'm drawn to the drawing. I constantly keep on wondering, what could it be? What did he have in mind? Is it a raw thought that he's exploring? I don't know. But now look at this rather amusing picture. Entertaining? Yes. But what is it? It's a game? The painter is playing with us? I can't be sure. We can see immediately there are 4 deer, 1 head. Now when we look at the entire painting, we are confused. But if we look at it closely and in bits, then it starts making a bit of sense. The deer crouching on the ground, the head fits him perfectly. The one to the right standing, I think the head is not doing too badly there either. The one at left, scratching his nose with one of his toes, again, fair. The only problem you and I may have might be with the deer which is hanging upside down, but that will also change if you change the orientation of the page in your hand. The landscape will create a problem, but the deer will be in position. So why did he paint it? Why? Is he playing, as I said, a game? I mean, he just had nothing else to do and he thought, let me try something which is different. But in my mind, I learned something from it. And what I learn is that perhaps it is the inadequacy of our understanding, but also the fact that you and I have to develop what can be called a strategy of seeing, a way to approach. And that, I think, comes across quite well if you keep that at the back of your head. If from remaining a amusing, entertaining kind of a picture, it can even hold up a lesson to you and to me. But now we come to mirrors. A Rajasthani painting, very often published, when the thing is sort of divided sort of vertically, we call it columns, but like this we call them registers. So there are 3 registers in this painting. The top register has a text from the Rasik Priya of Keshav Das, a 16th century text of Hindi, very well known. Then there is the middle register, where a young woman is seated, obviously in a position of eminence, and then down. But let's look at it from a little close. Now, yes, she's a woman of some means, some status is clear. And she's getting ready. And why should she be getting ready? Obviously, to meet the lover. And there are all these paricharikas around her, right? One of them is bringing a tray full of pan, another one is seated at her feet, one of them is holding a mirror in her hand, another one is having a charmer. So she's not looking at the mirror, she turns back to ask a friend, am I looking nice? Yeah, something like that. Understandable question. And then In the lower part of the same sheet, suddenly all women, her companions, servants have disappeared, and she's seated alone in a part of the garden of the palace. And she's, like natural, like young women always do, last minute check, right? Is my jhumka in place? Is my bindiya all right? And so on. She decides to look at the mirror again. And suddenly, in the mirror, she sees not one face, but two. And the poet at the top had said, she says to herself, have I gone mad? He's so much a part of my thought that I can't see myself alone in a mirror anymore. But the lover, who could be Krishna, who could be anybody, has not come from this direction. He's sneaked in from behind, and it is actually his face that is being reflected in that mirror. So this illusion or this misunderstanding or this confusion is where the Atma of the painting. We always talk about the Shri and the Atma of a work of art. The Atma of this particular work here is here, in this detail. So you enjoy the poetry at the top, you enjoy the situation in the middle, then you enjoy the confusion, and everything falls into place. You know and I know, she doesn't know it. The lover knows it, you know it, and I know it. The poet certainly knew it. So he's created this very amusing, very, I think, witty situation. She, like the one in the last painting, has just finished her toilet. A maid comes, holds a mirror in front of her, and says, look at yourself. And once again she sees, this one also sees. Because the lover in the next door palace has just lifted that chick a little, and it is his face that is being, reflected in that. Beautifully painted. But this moment of excitement, who is it in my mirror? Who else has entered it unbeknown to me? Slowly then, in that situation, we start taking in other details. The little pond of lotuses at the bottom of the picture, the breeze in the air, which has led to that little veil being lifted and making it easy for him, and the fragrance in the air because of this. So everything is contributing in a certain sense to that moment of joyous anticipation when she probably will meet him face to face. So mirrors do all kinds of things. This one has just finished her toilet also, and her maid, her companion, she says, now look at yourself. You don't worry about the fact that she's about 6 feet tall, and the mirror in the image she appears tiny, only small part of these things one takes for granted and so on. But mirrors, there's something I did not do right. The numbering is gone amiss. Anyway, when we have situations like this, then we start, in a certain sense, recalling poetry to our minds. The poetry appropriate to the occasion. Now, when this painting was published a long time ago, the caption given to it was, a young lady running indoors. That doesn't help me much, right? That she's a young lady, I can see. That she's not going out, but she's heading towards the indoors is also fairly clear. But what is it that you and I are looking at? A Doha of Bihari, the great 17th century poet, who wrote the famous Satyasai, comes to mind. It's not written at the back, comes to my mind. Because I'm bringing to the work of art I'm bringing something to work to be able to get something out. Dhurva ho hi na li uthe, dhuma dharani chahu kod, the poet said. Jarat avat jagat ko pavas prathama payod. She is virani, she is separated in love, and suddenly she is clouds of monsoon in the sky. And that is a season of longing to begin to stir in your frame when you are separated in particular. And then she says to herself or to her friend, no, that is not the cloud of monsoon in the sky. It is the smoke rising from the fire of separation in which I am burning at this moment, and I must escape from it. Beautifully uttered, Doha of Bihari, and see how exquisitely the painter paints it. Now that dupatta which she is holding in her two hands, she is barely able to hold on to it. It is filled with wind. Is this the fluttering of the dupatta? Or you ask yourself, or the fluttering of her heart at this point of time? The image stays in your mind as a not only exquisitely painted, it's very, very delicately painted, but something, thoughts, images, words come rushing into your mind when you look at images, when a painting like this. I'm sorry, there's something I've done which is really not right. I think I renumbered the slides, but let me see. I apologize. I mean, Peter Principle, I mean, it has to go wrong. But sorry?
Would you like to see all of them so you can?
I don't think I renumber them, but let hit or miss. I mean, something or the other I'll be able to say. A series called the Geet Govind. I don't know whether you are familiar with a great text like the Geet Govind, one of the last great Sanskrit utterances of our country, and it was written in the 12th century and in the eastern part of India by a great poet called Jayadeva, and it is all about the love of Radha and Krishna, lover and beloved. Mellifluous poetry, extraordinary. Lalita Lavangalata Parish, wonderful lilt, rhythm to it. Now, in that, lovers are separated, they come together, remonstrances, apologies, this and that, and so on, reconciliation. The entire poem is filled with that kind of thing. Now, in the Geet Govind, the series, the 150 paintings were made, and in that we get the situation of love, now separation, now anger, now remonstrance, and so on and so forth. This young woman, Radha in this particular case, she throws up her hands in the air and embraces the night, the poet says. Where is he? I mean, he's unfaithful to me, she says. Now, in every single folio of this particular series, the river Yamuna, on the banks of which the entire drama plays out, is there. But I look at the river Yamuna as an actor in these particular images. Suddenly, the river Yamuna is in a flood in spate because there is a situation of distress, and the river, almost in sympathy, right, does this. But when the two come together, you can see how wonderfully the painter brings this one stream and it joins the other stream like this and so on. Union, so to speak. And now she is in complete control. As she says at the end of the poem, she becomes the mistress and she says, now you do this for me, you do my hair, she says to her lover. She's become the Swadhina Patika, she's complete master of the situation. You do my hair, put flowers in my hair and something like this, or adjust the earring and so on, and he obeys. I mean, he happily obeys. And the painter creates this extraordinary landscape. I was incidentally struck by these 5 words which are on the blackboard: happiness, sadness, melancholia, fear, anxiety. So these paintings are not about any of these except about happiness. Right? Like that. Legitimately, rightly, she's turned her face and that. No, 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 this is not right. I mean, she must be saying to him that, do it gently. I mean, my ear is hurting or something like. You can almost hear them converse in images like this. In the Gita Govind, these details, the detail that you are looking at in the original painting is not more than 1.5 inches by 2 inches or so, 2.25 inches or so. There is exceptional attention to detail. If I did not know these pictures that well, I would be completely disoriented. What am I doing? Where are we going? Anyway, but something will fall in place eventually, even though the order is not right. A series called the Rasamanjari by the great poet Bhanu Datta of Bihar, and painted in the Pahadi area, in the area called Basoli, Nurpur and so on, where, once again, situations of love. The lovers, and in this case the lover is represented by, symbolized by Krishna, the form, the dark. They have spent the night, passionate embraces and so on. Suddenly, the morning dawns, and they have lost all sense of time. Now she was wearing in her ears lotus buds as ornaments. Now the laws of nature, in the morning the bud will begin to open. And she does not want him to notice that the morning has dawned. So she quickly covers her ears with her dupatta over there, like that. Delicate, very delicate, sensuous, erotic. There's not a straight line in the picture. Everything is rhythmic and curving and like that. What am I leading you towards? And I hope I'm doing that. This is a Nayaka. Nayaka means a young woman in a situation of love. There are types of Nayakas in the texts of India. She is the one who's agyata yauvana. She is unaware of the fact that youth has sprouted in her body. Right? And how delicately the painter paints it. She just has had a bath in the lotus pond, has emerged from it, and suddenly she feels confused. There's something on my stomach, and it's some algae which is sticking up from the pond and so on. But you know and I know that it's not that. It is the romavali, it is the very fine growth of very fine hair on the stomach. And she wants to remove it like this in the misunderstanding. You take in slowly details. If you notice the lotuses in the pond, the painter very intelligently has shown us different stages of lotuses, from a bud to a half-open flower to a fully blossoming lotus. So you and I have to be prepared to receive these hints which the painter throws in our direction. But we can do it only if we are looking at a painting like a mirror in the hand. If we are looking at it from close, if we are paying it the attention it deserves. This Nayaka from the same series, she had a lover. and spent the night with the lover. In the morning, her friend comes. And the friend starts looking at her like this. There are some scratches on her face, like nail bites or something like that and so on. And she is very quick-witted. She says to her, she finds the friend looking at her with such intensity, and she quickly thinks of an excuse. She says, I'm not going to spend another night in this palace. There's a cat up there which jumps at you. And there you see the cat, which looks like half a leopard or so towards the left, and the mouse is running away or something like that. And so yeah, she is the mature Nayaka who's capable of diverting the undeserved attention. There is that cat and this mouse. Just fun, but also meaningful, wonderfully. The poetry is quite extraordinary. The situation, as you could see, is very amusing. Same series. Nayaka, in the middle of the night, rainy, thundery clouds, and she sets out. Her companion, there's always a companion, a servant or a friend or something like that. And she says to herself, look how stormy the night is, and you are setting out in that. And haughtily she turns back and says, the likes of me are not afraid of darkness, of thunder or something like that. And so I will go there anyway. Now notice the clouds. Now notice the lightning darting through the clouds. The clouds have lifted almost like an operatic curtain, right? And as soon as she puts a step, the next step, the drops of rain stop. It's like a curtain of pearls which is hanging from the ceiling. The lover is waiting at the extreme left in a copse, and she is turning like this. I find this magical. What the painter of this particular series has done is something quite remarkable. He takes tiny little bits of beetle wing cases, which shine and glisten, cut them up into smithereens. And I can't show them to you here, but the entire background, the dark background of the night, there are these pieces which are sprinkled all over. And if you hold the painting in your hand and you move it ever so slightly, they begin to glisten and sparkle like fireflies in the night. That is the magic of these pictures. And that is exactly what the painter intended us to do, to move the painting in our hand and see things which we could not initially internalize or perceive, and suddenly the whole thing lights up like a switch of awareness which has been thrown. If you're worried about whether the bed on which the lovers were, they would not slip off or something like this, then we're seeing them with the wrong set of eyes. You have to be there is a natural exaggeration, a natural abstraction. The eyes are like this, the eyebrows are like, the poets have extraordinary similes and so on, and that is what we look at. Who is she? What is she doing, standing there all by herself? Flower in one hand, but with the other hand touching a tree, a flowering bush. There is a myth in India that if a tree has completely gone dry and is withered, if the most perfect woman touches it, it suddenly comes to life and flowers. Is that what is happening? I can't be sure. But the attraction of the whole composition, the perfection with which all these sort of little leaves and flowers have been painted, and that almost devouring look in the eye. Is she gazing at that flower or gazing beyond it? This is a painting by Monaco. Catrinelle mentioned to me that some of you have been looking at that book on Monaco. What are we looking at here? In our myth, in all cultures in fact, there are speculations about how did it all begin. The beginning of life on this planet. And there are wonderful, maddeningly beautiful descriptions of this possibility, that possibility. There is a Richa in the Rig Veda, which is called the Hiranyagarbha Stuti, praise of the golden egg. And the golden egg which descends one day, according to this belief, from the heavens on high and comes to rest on the waters of eternity. Countless ages come and go, and the egg stays there. And then one day, a crack appears, and out of that crack, creation springs out. But is this the golden egg, or is this the golden egg? It's the same painting. It is exactly the same painting. You moved it in your hand, and magically, gold begins to shine. Why is it golden? One of the texts says, because the sun was hiding inside it. It is the brilliance of the sun which makes it Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb, the golden egg. What amazes me at the same time, and what moves me deeply at the same time, is the fact of the painter having chosen to eliminate everything else. There is no shore, there is no bank, it is all water. And how does he render water? Not with waves. There is no Hokusai wave here or anything of the kind, but he makes them in rough concentric circles, walls and eddies. And what might have come to his mind? How do you tell the age of a tree? You cut the trunk and you get these circles of time, right? So it is timelessness that he's talking about? I think so. I could be mistaken, but I have to be proven wrong. So edge to edge, from top to bottom, right to left, and so on, it is all water. And in the heart of that water descends the golden egg. You know, Cardinal, when we shifted the thing, I think everything went sort of haywire and so on, but I hope you survive this, I mean, complete, let's say. Let's look at this.
Would you like to take a break? 5 minutes and readjust?
I lose my audience. I mean, as soon as I break, everyone will disappear. But let's, it may be not too uninteresting a way of sort of approaching a thing. What are we looking at? The death of King Dasharath, father of Rama in the Ramayana. Please remember, it's a small picture like this, and I'm going to take you through details of this, just this much. From the palace towards the extreme left, the bier of Dasharath is being taken out. Used to be a practice in earlier times in Rajput courts that when a king died, all people would shave their heads in mourning. Now from there, the bier of Dasharath is emerging at a perilous angle the painter shows us. If you start counting the number of heads and so on which are without any hair and so on, and it was used to be, since he was old, it used to be a practice, the death is celebrated, so to speak. It is a vimana which is being carried out for cremation. And now, all this in a page about this size. Saints and sinners, young and old, grieving, playing upon conch shells, bent with age and walking around like this. As far as the eye travels, you can see a sea of humanity come to say goodbye to their king. And you move further into the picture, and you see that the royal elephants have all been sent ahead of that. And one blind man is being led by another person who is, the types of people, the range of persons. We move further into the painting, and now the nearly dry bed of the river, there's very little water in the river. And that funeral pyre, you can see. Suddenly, all colors start disappearing as you move towards the right. And suddenly we are very, very close, and only the close members of the family, the princes, are there. Extraordinary feeling with which the painting has been done. From the joyousness of lovers meeting and sort of celebrating, and then suddenly we are into a different area, and there we are. These paintings that we have been talking about, looking at, are paintings done with a very, very deep understanding of human emotions, situations. The princes have descended into the waters, and servants stand with towels in their hands that they will come out, they'll dry themselves. All this on a sheet of paper of this size. So whether it is the Ramayana, or the Mahabharata, or the Geet Govind, or the Rasagapriya of Keshavadas, or the Satsai of Bihari, or the Rasamanjari of Bhanudat, names I have been throwing at you. The painter picks up with alacrity and great deep understanding of situations. And now I take you to a painting, a Mughal painting, which I generally end my lecture with, but it comes somewhere in the middle. I can't really do anything about it. But let me share with you what comes to my mind. What do we see? This old man, a dervish, a beggar if you like, a holy man, a Sufi at the end of his life, barely can stand on his own, rickety legs, resting his weight on a staff, a tasbih in his right hand, and looking. There is no light in the eyes. He's looking at nothingness. Beyond this, what is there? And every time, this painting belongs to the period of Jahangir, which means early 17th century. And each time I assure you, I see this particular painting, and I must have seen it 100 times. A poem by the contemporary poet, who died a few years ago, Ali Sardar Jafri, comes to my mind. 400 years separate this poem from the painting that we are looking at. And in my mind, I immediately make a connection. If you have the heart to hear it, I'll recite this wonderful poem. It's one of the great poems of our times. The poem is titled Mera Safar, My Journey. It's about death and rebirth. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, the poet says. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, आँखों के दिए बुझ जाएंगे, हाथों के कमल कुमलाएंगे और बरगे ज़ुबान से नुत्ख़ो सदा की हर तितली उड़ जाएगी. A description of death. A day will come when the lamps of my eyes will begin to grow dim, and when the lotuses of my hand will begin to wilt, and from the branch on which butterflies of speech and articulation keep sitting, all of them will fly away one by one by one. एक काले समंदर की तह में फूलों की तरह से खिलती हुई, कलियों की तरह से हंसती हुई सारी शक्लें खो जाएंगी. In a dark, eddying waters, all the faces that I love, all the smiles that I am aware of will all disappear in that dark ocean. ये मेरी धरती, मेरी ज़मीं, हंसती हुई ये हीरे की कनी, इसकी सुबहें, इसकी शामें, एक मुश्ते गुबारे इंसान पर शबनम की तरह रो जाएंगी. This beautiful earth on which I stand, the beautiful mornings and dawns and evenings, all of them will go away one day. दिल की धड़कन, खून की गर्दिश, सब रागनियाँ सो जाएंगी. All the melodies that I hear. And what are the melodies that I hear? The beating of my heart, the coursing of blood through my veins. All of these melodies will fall silent one day. फिर कोई नहीं ये पूछेगा. And then nobody is going to turn around and say, Sardar kahan hai महफिल में? Where did this man Sardar go? That's his name, Ali Sardar Jafri. But then in the next part he says, लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा. But I'll be back here again. लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा, बच्चों की ज़ुबान से बोलूँगा, बच्चों के दहन से बोलूँगा, चिड़ियों की ज़ुबान में गाऊँगा. और जब बीज उगेंगे धरती में और कोंपलें अपनी उंगली से मट्टी की तहों को छेड़ेंगी, मैं पत्ती पत्ती कली कली फिर अपनी आँखें खोलूँगा. I'll be back here. And I'll speak through the lisping tongue of the newborn and through the twittering of the birds in my garden. And when little shoots of grass begin to tease the surface of the soil, I'll open my eyes, take dewdrops in the palm of my hand and start weighing them. Rebirth. मैं रंगे हिना, आहंगे ग़ज़ल, अंदाज़े सकुन बन जाऊँगा. I'll turn into the blush on the cheek of the newly wed. Ahange ghazal, I'll turn into the sound of a ghazal. This is what I will turn. जाड़ों की हवाएं दामन में जब फसलें खिज़ां को लाएंगी, रहरों के जवां कदमों के तले सूखे हुए पत्तों से मेरे चलने की सदाएं आएंगी. And when winter comes and leaves fall, and then you hear the sound of the crunching of the leaves under young feet, that those feet will be mine. I will be the one making those sounds. आकाश की नहरी सब झीलें, धरती की सुनहरी सब नदियाँ हस्ती से मेरी भर जाएंगी. All the blue lakes in the sky, all the golden rivers of my land will be filled with my presence. तब सारा ज़माना देखेगा, तब सारा ज़माना देखेगा. हर काशिक है सरदार यहाँ, हर माशूका सुल्ताना है, हर किस्सा मेरा अफसाना है. Everyone will then see, all lovers bear my name, and all beloveds bear the name of my wife, and all stories which are being told are my stories. And then he ends beautifully. What am I? मैं, and this is the last 4 lines, मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ अय्याम के अफ़सों खाने में. I am but an evanescent moment in the wonder house of time. मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ अय्याम के अफ़सों खाने में. मैं एक लरज़ता क़तरा हूँ मसरूफ़ सफ़र जो रहता है माजी की सुराही के दिल से मुस्तक़बल के पैमाने में. मैं little drop which is trembling at the lip of the carafe of the past, about to be poured into the goblet of the future. मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ, एक लरज़ता क़तरा हूँ. I'm trembling at that particular spot, about to be poured into the goblet of the future. And then he says, मैं सोता हूँ और जागता हूँ. I go to sleep, then I wake up again. मैं सोता हूँ और जागता हूँ और जाग के फिर सो जाता हूँ. सदियों का पुराना खेल हूँ मैं मर के अमर हो जाता हूँ. This has happened countless times. I do not die. I come back. Why does this poem come to me? Not only because this man is old, but now see this for yourself. Because the painter, with remarkable imagination, has painted a tiny little flowering plant at the feet of the old man. We didn't even see it. When we saw the whole painting, it was all a kind of a dark, gloomy, greenish black background that we were looking at. But that little plant, the bottom right, is this what was at the back of the mind of the painter? The painter obviously did not know of this poem, because the poem came 400 years later. But there is a very famous utterance by the great Sufi Rumi, who says, Hum chu sabza, baraha Rumi daim. We are like grass, and we grow again and again and yet again. Am I right or am I wrong? I don't care. I really do not care. Because this is what the painting tells me. This is the language in which it speaks to me. And I hear it. There are a number of other paintings which have been lost, I think, in the process. But we are at the end of nearly 1 hour of my time and yours. So I'll end it here. I could have gone on for some more time if the order of the paintings had been right. Nobody's fault but mine, or of the cyber world, whatever. But may I thank you for being here and for your attention.
All right. Thank you, Professor Goswamy, for this experience that has left me speechless. I don't think I've ever been as resentful of technology and the cyber world as I am right now. But thank you for this journey and for weaving us in and out of this narrative which changed this order, changed its shape, and nevertheless ended up making so much sense and being such a phenomenal story. Thank you. And since you told us that you will be so kind as to take questions, if people, are you?
Easy question.
All right. Could we have some easy questions, please?
No question, they mean either I've completely failed or completely succeeded. I don't know.
Or we need some time to catch our breath.
Somebody will have to interpret because I don't hear very well.
That was a very refreshing lecture. Thank you so much. I was thinking throughout the lecture, what do you think? Does a story evolve with every stroke of a painting? Or is it a well-thought story that is put into the form?
So she's asking, do you think that a story evolves with every stroke of a painting, or is there a story that gets translated into the painting?
No, each painting does not necessarily have a story. You can weave your own story around it. But the situation is very fluid.
It's off. No, it's on. It's on. It's on.
Can you hear me? Or shall I go up there? This is
Is
not
everyone
working.
able to hear? We're fine.
Hello. You know, there are texts which are painted, so there is always something in the text itself, right? Like I've cited half a dozen texts. And Geet Govind, Ramayana, Mahabharata, no, not Mahabharata, but Bhagavad Puran and so on and so forth. So the painter has some idea what he's going to do, right? But as he works, inspiration from any kind of source might just enter the ken of his thought and transform it. Sometimes painters do things which they can't remember at all. What did I do this? I'll cite to you a very wonderful couplet by the poet Ghalib. Ghalib, the greatest poet of the Urdu language. Somebody once asked, must have asked him, there's no question recorded, how do you think of these things, right? When you write, where do these thoughts come to you from? Where they come from? And he says in a remarkable utterance, आते हैं गैब से ये मज़ामी ख़याल में, गालिब सरीरे खामा नवाए सरोश है. He says these thoughts come to me from somewhere up there. And then in the second line he says, since you used to write with a reed pen on a piece of paper, and when you write with a reed pen, some scratchy sound is heard, soft sound. He says, what you hear when I'm writing is not the sound of my pen upon paper, but the swish of the wings of angels which hover in the air above me. It's a great utterance, the swish of the wings of angels that are here, that are hovering in the air above me. So, suddenness, inspirational moment can enter. I'm not sure how did the painter begin, let us say the last painting we've been looking at. But perhaps when he made the portrait of this particular old man tottering and resting on a staff, And maybe somebody uttered a verse, right? By Rumi that I just cited, Hum to samza barha roi daim. And he said, why don't I paint a little flower at the bottom right and so on, and it comes to life in a different fashion. So these things happen. These things do happen. There are moments which are sudden, moments which you are completely unprepared to receive within yourself, and the whole thing can turn around at 180 degrees and so on. If you have a moment, I don't know, maybe there's too much poetry that I've gone into, but I'm tempted to cite that. I looked at a painting, a Mughal painting, which I don't have a slide of here, I have it on my computer somewhere. A group of people is seated, right? Sheikh Sadi, the great Persian poet, along with another friend of his, some companion, and there are 2 or 3 people making music at the side. And one man, the old man next to Sadi, he throws up his hands in the air like this, as if he's gone into some kind of experience, a spiritual experience. I couldn't understand what that was. Why is his hands up in the air and as if he's celebrating something? And I turned the painting on its back, and on the back was a khatha by Sheikh Sadi, the poet, in Persian. And then I made sense of it. It made sense to me. Why is he so ecstatic? And it's in Persian. If you have the heart to hear it, I'll recite it for you. Gili khushbu dar hammam ruzi rasid az daste mahbubi badastam badu gufta ke mushki ya biri ke man az bue dil aviz mastam bagufta man gili nachiz budam लेकिन मुद्दते बागुल निशस्तम कमाले हम नशी बरमन असर करद वगरना मन हमू हाकिम के हस्तम. Meaning what? Have you all understood this? I doubt it. Meaning what? This is Sadi's composition. One day, the poet says, I was about to enter the public bath. There used to be no private bath, hammam, right? And this is about 600 years ago. And my beloved handed me a piece of clay, like a soap bar. There's no soaps at that time. You cleanse your body with very fine dust which has been there put in the form of a soap cake, right? And he or she handed it to me, and I held it in my hand, and it smelled so maddeningly beautiful. I spoke to it. I said, what are you? Are you musk? Are you amber? That I'm besotted with your fragrance? And out of the goodness of its heart, that piece spoke to me and said, I am just a humble piece of clay. But I remember the soil from which I come, there used to be some roses which used to grow, and it is the company that I kept which has made me what I am. Otherwise, what am I? A fistful of dust, a piece of clay. Extraordinary. You know, you can say this in one sentence. Good company is good thing, right? The good. Yeah? You can say it like that. But just imagine, I mean, how beautifully crafted the whole thing is, right? And I mean, if you hear it, you will not be able to forget it, not be able to put it out of your mind, right? What am I? A fistful of dust, a lump of clay. So this is the way it happens. It's a slightly mysterious word, slightly. It can be maddening if you don't understand. You go back to this, what is it? What am I missing? What is it that not getting out of this and so on. And suddenly it will happen. Suddenly it can happen. I don't think I've answered your question, but I've at least recited some good poetry for you.
Thank you for an amazing lecture. It was brilliant. I just want to know if there's any particular painting that speaks to you on that you relate to, that you find really captivating.
I apologize, I don't hear too well. Yeah.
What she's asking is if there's any particular painting that speaks to you that you find captivating, something that's close to you personally.
To be honest, I mean, practically everything that I showed. I mean, I must have on my computer something like 5,000 slides. And I picked a few, right, which I thought you might enjoy, and I might be able to say something about them which might make a difference, right? I greatly enjoy this particular painting, right? I repeat it to myself when I'm alone. I mean, I recite like that Masterji of mine as some poetry to myself. And, there are so many things which burn a hole in your memory, right? So many things. And one is grateful for it. One really is grateful for it. Because if you're living in this particular world, you're not escaping into this, but this becomes a part of you, these kinds of images, right? And, can bring you untold riches. The riches of the mind are what you bring to a work of art, and then the work of art, in a certain sense, whispers into your ears. That's what happens. Is that adequate or no? No.
That's a yes. That's a yes.
Yes.
How did it start with, how
How do I start?
did you start looking so deep into the paintings that they started talking to you?
How did your engagement with this area start? How did you start focusing so deeply on it?
It's a long story. I'll put you to sleep. I mean, it's a very, very long story. Tell you briefly, very briefly. I started my life as a civil servant. I was in the IAS, right? Long years ago. And 2.5 years and I was done. I mean, I didn't want to stay on in that. So I came back to teach, right, at my university. I was a student of history. There was no art at that time being taught anywhere at all, except perhaps in Baroda. And I wasn't aware of art history as such. So as a historian, I wanted to do something slightly different from the conventional history. History has changed dramatically. Now it is very different from what it used to be when I, some 50 odd years ago, came to the university to teach. And I wanted to do something about social history, right? And I went to my professor and I said, who was an honest to God, good historian, but like this, right? He had never heard of art, social history. And I said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do, this particular area interests me, and I want to look at the society which threw up this kind of art, right? The structure of society, class structure, status and this and that and so on. And the relationship of painter to patron to religion and so on. I'm sure I'm killing you with all this detail. I don't think you are interested in this. But thank you for asking a question. And he said to me, I don't know anything about this. Just give me 3 names because I will not register you. 3 names of persons who might be able to tell me whether it's a good enough subject for you to enter into or not. And I gave him 3 names, A.L. Basham, Karl Khandalawala and W.G. Archer. And he wrote to those three people, and luckily for me, all three of them said, this crazy young man is good. Let him work on the social background of this kind of painting. And then slowly, when I looked at these pictures, and for 3 years I was traveling through the area, village to village, town to town, and so on. And I saw paintings which really blew my mind. And then the background shifted and became the foreground. And that's how I entered the world of art. I'm still not out of it. I mean, I'm in it. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you for being here. Thank you again.
Thank you once again, Professor Goswamy. For this beginning, I hope it will be a beginning for all of us, and I hope we will have more opportunities to engage with this. Thank you to our team at the CEPT Foundation Program for helping with organizing, putting things together. Thank you especially to Vishwa for all the arrangements that she's been making, and to Himanshi, and to Duljibai and to Pooja for the usual work that they do all the time, and we may not notice it, but it's all there in the background. And to CEPT, and for all of you for being here, for having spoken of nothing but this lecture for a while now, and for being an interested audience who listened and who will leave this place with more to carry into the art that we engage with. I hope. That is my hope. Thank you.